have a question for you. Are you really gullible enough to believe or assume that businesses and other groups pay any taxes at all? Is that really something that you believe? If your church were required to pay taxes, who would pay them? These are the sorts of things that we're going to talk about today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt. Today is Saturday the 22nd of May of 2021, and I'm glad to have you here today, whether on Rumble, on the podcast, YouTube, or wherever. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully I'll say something that you'll enjoy and really think about, because I think it's beneficial for you to consider these ideas. Today, again, the subject is business taxes. That's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to read my notes again. I'm going to read the first couple of these again, because I want to make sure they stick. I want to make sure you really think about what it is that I'm saying. Is anyone out there really gullible enough to assume businesses and other groups pay any taxes? And I'll explain that as I get along, right? If your church were required to pay taxes, who would actually pay them? Where did the money in the hands of the church leadership come from? What about business? Does their revenue come from the fat cats who own the business? Or does it come from their consumers, from the people who use their products and services? So you think you want a value-added tax? Have you seriously not figured out that if you use those entities, you pay those taxes, those value-added taxes? Do you honestly believe you escape if you don't use a given company? Have you not considered the idea that others will want to make more money to offset new or higher taxes they must pay as a result of the costs going up to things that they're using, even if you're not using those things? Do you not realize you'll likely pay for the resultant wage increase that makes it possible for them to keep up with the cost of living? Has that not crossed your mind? These are the questions that I've asked in my notes today, and I'm going to kind of expound on these a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Look, when a business does what it does this process, and it is, I look at what it costs me to do business, and I charge accordingly. I have to charge at least enough to pay for the cost of doing business. So I have employees, I have to pay for my employees. I have equipment, and it's amortized over a given period of time. I have to pay for my equipment. It's leased or whatever. I have to pay for my equipment. I have rent, mortgage, whatever, on the building. I have electricity. I have taxes. Do you honestly think that those taxes are not getting passed on to the people who are using the products and services of the business? I'm going to say it again. Imagine you're in a church. You're a church member. Good church. You like your church. But the church is required to pay taxes, which in my opinion churches should be. No church should operate without paying taxes, in my opinion. And I could go into the details on that, and maybe I'll do that in another video, but I'm not going to do it right now. Just suffice it to say that in my mind they should pay those taxes. And again, the details, I'll tell you that it runs along the lines of, if you don't pay taxes, you give the government something to hold over you. It's not that I like the idea of them paying taxes. It's that I think that they can't get away with not paying taxes without the government holding things over them as a result. But the point I'm making is this: if the church had to pay taxes, if your church had to pay taxes, okay, it's not the church that would pay the taxes, because the church doesn't, quote, get its money from magic, or typically from the people who actually do the church, make the church happen. The pastor, the ushers, the choir, they're not the ones who are paying the taxes. Well, they're paying, or the money to the church. They're paying part of it, right? But the congregation, the flock, the audience, whatever you want to call them, all of these people are paying for that church to be in existence. It's what makes it possible. It's what makes all of that possible. So this idea that if the church were taxed, what would happen is that the people who were in the tax wouldn't pay that the church wouldn't pay that tax is a rubbish idea. Of course they're going to pay that tax. It doesn't matter whether or not you think that's the case, it is. And the same thing applies to businesses. If you go into your local grocery store and that grocery store is required to pay taxes of some sort, whether it's taxes for their employees, employment tax for their employees or whatever, federal income tax withheld and whatever, all of the money, including what the employees earn, by the way, but the taxes too, that money, sales tax, that isn't something that the store pays. That's something you pay. You as a user of that store pay those taxes. You do that. Okay? So I want to get across, I want to get rid of this idea in people's minds that a tax on business is not a tax on you. I'm going to say this again. Okay, first, for just a second, let's say given business gets taxed and you don't use that business. Does that mean you aren't paying the taxes? Well, consider this. You have a friend who uses, a brokerage house, and the brokerage house gets taxed. But you're not a person who can get involved in all of that brokerage type of thing. So you don't do that. Well, you don't pay the tax, right? Yeah, actually you do in a sense, because let's say your friend works at the local donut shop, and part of what he makes for money, he or she makes for money, goes to his payment of brokerage, and he feels like brokerage houses and the taxes that they pay, and so he or she feels like he or she needs more money. We'll say he needs more money, right, in order to pay for that his habit of using those brokerage houses. He asks his employer for more money, and if he can get it, guess who pays that? It's not the employer. In the short term, in the immediate sense, it's the employer. But in the long term, it is people who are buying from that business, because the employer is going to pass that cost on. This idea, this silliness that people have in their heads that says, I don't pay that tax, and that's just not true. And let me point something out. And I had another thought come to me while I was actually talking about that. So let's say it's a brokerage fee, right, or a brokerage tax, right, that happens. So you don't pay that tax, do you? Do you have a retirement account? Then you probably pay that tax. Okay? Because the tax will affect your retirement account if they're doing any kind of investing against stocks and bonds and so forth. It's going to do that. So this idea that businesses somehow pay taxes is a ludicrous idea, and you need to disabuse yourself of it as quickly as you can. When a business pays a tax, the people who use the business are actually the ones who ultimately paid that money. I'm not saying that there's no instance in which somebody will pay the taxes out of his or her personal funds as a business owner, but I'm saying 95% of the time, I would argue, it's highly unlikely that that's what's happening. I'm just telling you. If that's what you're thinking, you're confused. So if you lobby for the idea of business taxes, and I might add too that this is something that also works for the wealthy in some senses, not in every sense. But if people who are wealthy have to pay more money, and they're people who are producing things, they're going to up prices in order to make more money if they feel like they can do it. And again, who's going to pay that tax? It's not going to be the wealthy person. It's going to be you. It's going to be you. Because if you use the services of Amazon, then Jeff Bezos' taxes, he's going to factor that in when he decides how much he wants to make. Maybe he can make it all back, maybe he can't. And at some point what he's going to do is just throw in the towel if he can't. If it gets onerous, if it gets to be too much, right? So this is what I'm trying to get across today. Look, this idea of business taxes, this idea of corporate taxes of one sort or another is a ridiculous idea. These costs are passed on. They don't stay there. All right, I need to go ahead and wrap up, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Today is the 22nd of May, and it's a Saturday. Welcome to everybody who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube. Thank you for coming along. Remember that Rumble is my favorite platform. I like it best. for a number of reasons. Remember that you can like my video on YouTube, and of course you can give it a don't like on YouTube if you want to do that, and you can also give me a positive rumble on Rumble, and you can give me a negative one if you want to as well. Remember that you can comment on any platform, and then I'm interested in hearing what people have to say. This has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and I obviously am glad to have you along regardless which platform you use. The subject today has been business taxes. Tomorrow's subject is going to be we are acting, and I want to clarify some things that I think some people, particularly some pundits, are missing about what's going on in society, and particularly with regard to conservatives. Hope you're having a good day today. I know it's the Sabbath for a lot of folks. If you happen to celebrate the Sabbath, happy Sabbath to you. I do, but not in the way a lot of people think is appropriate. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope your weekend goes well in general, and hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's Daily Summation. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video was recorded on Saturday, May the 22nd of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.